the concept of a black president, like, look, it's funny to look back in history at this. James Baldwin did a speech at Cambridge when he's debating William F. Buckley. William F. Buckley, by the way, is my example for how far conservatism has fallen these days, because as horribly racist and bigoted as William F. Buckley was, the dude clearly knew what he was talking about. The dude did the work, like, he studied, he knew he was wrong, but now we got fucking Charlie Kirk. It's like, the conservatives have fallen a long way since William F. Buckley. But James Baldwin was talking about seeing Robert F. Kennedy, senior, just so you guys know. Right, just so we clarify. Robert F. Kennedy talking about the black community. And he was saying how far the black community had advanced. And he says, and Robert F. Kennedy said that, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, in the next 30 years or so, we could have a black president. I think we could have that. And James Baldwin said something that resonated with me really strong. And he said that he was in a barbershop when he saw that on TV. And he said, and everyone in the barbershop laughed, but not for the reason you would guess. And he said the reason they laughed was that black people have been here for like 400 years. And here is RFK, whose family's been here like 80 years. And he's on TV telling us, well, listen, folks, you're doing really well. If you're good, one of you might be president one day. It's like, who the fuck do you think you are? It was just funny thinking about that. But that stood out to me because I remember when Obama was elected. Of course, it was a big deal and everything. But I saw people saying, I never thought I would see a black president. And I'm like, man, you were 24. I mean, do you think I mean, really, that was my exact thought. It was like, you don't think over 50 years that could possibly happen? Like, I could see if you were, 72 when you said that, but you got a lot of life ahead of you. Like, it didn't seem insane to me that it's actually a lot weirder that someone with his name was elected than the fact that he was black. I think that was a much bigger hurdle to overcome. But I don't know. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about it. Like, it's a movie that wouldn't make sense today. Like, didn't make sense back then either, but go ahead.
It didn't make sense back then either. But even just as a concept, it wouldn't, like, you couldn't even make a movie like that because it was like, what do you mean? Who cares? Like, it wouldn't make any sense. But like, just to your point real quick about the proposed absurdity of Obama even becoming president, in 2007, when he first started his run, I was in school and I remember I was in like high school and I remember I had a history teacher who showed us a video of him announcing his run for president. And this is like the first, black person, not the first black president, obviously Jesse Jackson had tried. I think Al Sharpton had tried in 04, but this was the first guy that kind of like had an era of seriousness about him where you kind of thought, hey, this guy can actually do this. And I remember a couple of black kids in my class, they're just like, nah, no way. And it's kind of going back to what you're saying about being so young and still having this view. It's kind of like, this is the kind of view that has been projected onto us. It's like kids who are 15, 16 years old, just like, nah, no way. And even the white kids in the class were like, what do you mean? Like, why? Why not? And it's like, they all said the same thing. Someone's going to kill him. So there's no way there's no way he makes it to the inauguration. Like, there's no way. And that's just the thinking that we had. I think not even all of us, even me, I thought it's plausible that Obama could become president. But a lot of people at that time still, if they had that mentality of like, they'll never let us do that. And again, that's the only reason like a movie like Head of State can even exist, is because that was still such a dominant mentality, even around the 2000s. When you go back like 40 years earlier, you had Robert F. Kennedy saying, this is a possibility. And you think about what James Baldwin saw in that barbershop, that mentality had existed even so many decades later. This idea just can't happen.
That's true. That's true. I didn't think Obama would win. The black thing and the name was a big deal.
The name was, like you said, more than his race.
The name more, absolutely. I thought that, all right, this guy made a big splash. Maybe 10 years from now, he'll be president, because Hillary Clinton's obviously getting the nomination. That did not happen. Which kind of shows you like how bad she was. I don't know. It's like, Jesus Christ. This guy, I know Obama was like a once in a generation political force, but man, you figure you could have like fought that off for 1 year. I don't know, but it's all right. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say his middle name was Hussein, for crying out loud. What do you?
This should be
the end of it right there.
I'm glad you agree with me on this because I think the name was a much bigger deal than his skin color. Like by far, I mean, both of them were like harmful in a lot of ways, but the name, holy shit, it's a testament to Obama that he actually got over that. You know, his middle name was literally Hussein. And Coulter, by the way, who's an awful human being, she did make a funny joke about that, where she was like how she doesn't like Obama and everything. And like, well, listen, Obama has like, you know, pretty standard policies, and he seems like a decent human being, a good family man. And she said, okay, I admit he's the least evil person named Hussein I can think of. And that was pretty funny. You got it.
That's a good joke. That's a funny
It's a good joke. I mean, yeah, credit where credit's due. That is pretty funny. All right, let's go over. Who do you got for your honorable mention? Who do you get for didn't quite make the cut?
Honorable mention, he was originally in my top 5, but then I started thinking more about Bush, and I was like, you know, fuck it, I'm going to put Bush in my bottom 5. My honorable mention is actually, it's a weird one. It's actually John Tyler. John Tyler, just a random one. For people that don't know, he was one of the first Whig presidents. He only became president because the guy before him, Harrison, died very early into his administration. And John Tyler, the reason why I was going to put him on here is because he's an example of someone who like gets into office and then just immediately says, you know what, I'm going to do the fucking opposite of everything that I was supposed to do. Like, he just goes against what the Whigs want to do as a party, and he just vetoes a bunch of their shit, just blocks a bunch of their policies. And he's not doing it because he like fundamentally disagrees with them. He's just doing it because he just fucking wants to. He just doesn't want the Congress to succeed over him. He thinks I'm the president. I should make these decisions. Fuck Congress. And it's very like he has no real conviction behind why he's doing it. He just decides that I don't want to go with these policies, even though this is literally the policy that my party has had for the last like 10 years or so. And so, yeah, I just feel like, you know, when you think about senators like Fetterman in Pennsylvania and Kristen Sinema in Arizona, they were elected by a certain constituency to serve them, to kind of do a certain, you know, have a certain ideology, a certain approach, and they just completely abandoned it as soon as they got in office. And just said, "Okay, this is a 6-year Senate term. I'm just going to do totally the opposite of what my people wanted me to do." And that's what John Tyler kind of reminds me of. And like, yeah, of course, things are going to change when you get in office. You have to serve all people, and not just people who voted for you. But when you don't have any real conviction behind it, and you're just doing it just to do it, and maybe you're even doing it for, like, in this case, somebody like cinema because somebody's paying you to do it, like that really. I just hate that when politicians do that. Like, it's a George Santos kind of thing of just like presenting yourself as something, and then you get in office and it's like, no, it was all a lie. And that's what John Tyler kind of reminded me of. So I originally did have him like number 5 on my list, but you know, I considered the fact that he wasn't really that influential, and there were, again, a lot of terrible presidents during that time period. So he ends up being an honorable mention. But yeah, no, still a pretty shitty president just overall.
I agree. I guess when you said it, because so before the show started, you saw I pulled up pictures of presidents that I thought you would put on your list, and you caught me off guard with George W. Bush. I didn't have him on the list, but one of them I included was John Tyler. So I was like, oh, I got John Tyler ready to go. And so
originally Bush wasn't on the list, and Tyler was number 5, so you would have been right there with him.
But John Tyler, like, it's a lot like Andrew Johnson, where it's like, bro, you're clearly in the wrong here, and even if you think you're in the right, you are outgunned. Why? And it's so, because Tyler is funny because like 2 years. So Corey mentioned that he was vice president for a short time, a very short time. Like, he barely finished decorating the office before William Henry Harrison died. And so before the show started, we were talking about Zachary Taylor, who was president for like 18 months or something, 2 years, whatever, before he ended up dying. And we were joking about, Corey made this joke about Zachary Taylor eating cherries, because like when I remember reading that he died from food poisoning from bad milk and cherries, and that was like 30 years ago when I read this. And since then, a lot of people said that a lot of these presidents got sick and died in the mid 1800s probably because the White House had contaminated water from a lagoon they had. And that's one of the theories about why William Henry Harrison died. So he was already old. He was like 70 years old when he became president.
The oldest one we'd had at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that could have killed. But William Henry Harrison died like 31 days into office, and then John Tyler became president. But it was a similar situation. Actually, there's a lot of similarities between him and Johnson, that they both ascended through the death of a president and were just battling Congress tooth and nail for no discernible reason. For no real reason. Like, and what I remember laughing reading about Tyler, because like a couple years into his presidency, he was like, "Hey, you guys gonna back for it?" No, like, what are you talking about? We're not gonna back you for re-election.
Like, he tries to. That's what's so crazy. He's actually at the end. He's like, "So we doing this again, right? Like we re it up, right?" And it's like, No, where have you been for the last 4 years? Like, there's no way.
It's so like he must have been just really dumb. Like he must have been insanely stupid. And to not like again, like when you're playing someone who sucks at a sport, it's like, okay, do you not realize you suck? And like the best thing about John Tyler, well, there's two good things about John Tyler. One is that he has that weird record for like he has a grandson that's still alive today because he had a son at like 70 and his son had a son like 70 or something. So this today, someone who's president like in the 1840s has a grandson alive. That's wild. And also without him, we wouldn't have the coolest presidential slogan in history with Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Like, I mean, it doesn't get better than that. Like the Tyler too is pretty awesome. My honorable mention, I see you see him on the screen, I'm pretty sure. Is Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was like, I remember reading about Andrew Jackson as a kid, and the story seemed really cool to me at the time. Looking back now, it's awful, but I was 9 or something because Andrew Jackson wanted to essentially displace the Seminole Indians from Florida, just kick them out, Trail of Tears and everything. And he went to the Supreme Court. They went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said you can't do this, and they ruled against them. And Jackson said, "All right, the Supreme Court said I can't do it. Have them raise an army and stop me," and did it anyway. And I remember thinking, that's pretty cool. So no, that's awful. That's not looking back at that. That's terrible that he did that. I appreciate the defiance and stuff, but the whole ethnic cleansing thing, not a good look, Andrew Johnson. And Andrew Jackson is another weird one too, because Republicans love to like say, Lincoln was a Republican. He freed the slaves, right? That's how we're right, because Lincoln was an abolitionist. And they also love Andrew Jackson, who was pretty much the founder of the Democratic Party. And so it's like, okay, you can't have both of them. You can have Jackson or you can have Lincoln. You cannot have both. And I don't know, it's odd. Like they revere him, and he is so. The Democratic Party that we know, I would say it was actually founded by Van Buren, but Jackson was like the first person to get the ball rolling on this, and Van Buren finalized it. The brains and the showman and shit and everything. But they also the claim that Thomas Jefferson was the founder too, because he has the Democratic Republican Party, and Andrew Jackson founded the Democratic Party. So I don't know if you remember this, but the Democratic Party, after they have a presidential inauguration, they have a Jefferson-Jackson ball in honor of Andrew Jackson and Thomas Jefferson. I think they mentioned it in House of Cards, actually. I think they mentioned it. And so then Barack Obama became president. And they're like, this doesn't seem good. Like, maybe we should not call it the Jefferson-Jackson ball with the first black president. Maybe we should drop this. And they did, and now they call it the J&J ball. It's the perfect Democrat thing, right? It is like a textbook blue liberal thing to do. It's like, well, we still got out, but we're just not going to say it. We're going to pretend that these J's stand for something else, and so now it's the J&J ball, not the Jefferson Jackson ball. So that's good times. I don't know.
You asked them like, who's J&J, and they're like, John F. Kennedy and Johnson. Johnson. Yeah, what's up?
You might as well, right? Like they would be much better additions than Jefferson and Jackson.
And J&J? Like, why is it still J&J? Like it's like I don't know. But
don't think about it too much, you fucking nerd.
But no, it's interesting. Andrew Jackson. So when I was thinking about this list of worst presidents, I was kind of debating between there's this concept of these were guys who were actually bad at the job, and just shitty actual executives, shitty administrators. And then there are people who are just they were actually kind of good at being president. But the things they did were bad. Like the things they did were objectively bad for the country. And I think Andrew Jackson, along with Reagan and guys like that, kind of fit into that category. So they were actually quite effective at getting their agenda done. Just their agenda was really terrible. And not just terrible from a moral standpoint, which of course it was in both cases of Jackson and Reagan, but also from actually an objective standpoint, Jackson destroyed the economy by getting rid of the Second Bank of the United States and led to the Great Depression of I think it was the Panic of 1837, which was at that time the worst depression we would see until the actual Great Depression of 100 years later. And Jackson's actions against the Bank of the United States can be directly tied to that economic downturn. Plus, of course, you mentioned the Indian Removal Act, which is actual textbook ethnic cleansing that he was responsible for. So I mean, just there's a lot of terrible things. He's effective at getting stuff done.
Yeah.
But these are terrible things that he's getting done. And I compare that to kind of Reagan a little bit too, in that regard. So yeah, Jackson was definitely somebody who was like bottom 10, like somebody I could definitely like see putting on my list. But a lot of historians like to put him like on the higher end of the list just because of the effective nature of his presidency and the reshaping of it, the creation of the Democratic Party. But it's like, no, even from an objective standpoint, when you look at like the aftermath of his presidency, it was objectively bad when it came to the economy and things like that. So yeah, Jackson definitely sucks more than anything good about him.
That's true. I agree. It's like that's a good distinction. Like you're good at being a bad president. Like you're actually good at what you're doing. Yeah, the stuff you're doing is terrible, but hey, you get shit done. Other people I had Reagan, Harding, and Nixon. I think were on there. And Nixon is weird because that definitely fits into like the Jackson categories. Like he actually got what he wanted done, and some stuff that's actually pretty good, honestly. Like the EPA, like relations with China, stuff like that. Nixon did a lot of decent stuff. But once again, fucking moron, like a fucking moron. It's just like Nixon is a fascinating case study in American history. Like he was in California, and he was Eisenhower's vice president. He always had this underdog thing with him because he went to Duke, and Duke wasn't a prestigious school at the time. And he said people looked down on him because of a shitty education at Duke, which is a funny thing to say now. And and Eisenhower hated him. Eisenhower couldn't stand Nixon at all. He would give him the shittiest jobs possible, which is kind of like part of being vice president. You do this other president doesn't want to do. You're like, yeah, take my shit work. I don't feel like doing it. And when Nixon ran for president at the end of Eisenhower's term, Eisenhower waited until like the last possible second to endorse him, which definitely hurt Nixon because that was a super like. Nixon probably won that election, and Kennedy probably honestly, but he would have absolutely had a much better chance if Eisenhower didn't shank him by not backing him like that. And then he becomes president after Johnson and Kennedy and all that, and then he like the Whitewater cover-up happens. And what's weird about this is even when I was a kid, I was blown away at how fucking mundane the Whitewater thing was. Like looking back on it, it's like, say what?
You mean Watergate? You said Whitewater, you mean Watergate.
Oh, sorry, Watergate. Yeah, Watergate. Yeah, Watergate. Yeah, that one too. But
that one too. Yeah.
That one too. But how was like, oh, so they broke in and stole some shit, and Nixon lied about it. Yeah. That doesn't seem. I figured they did that shit all the time, and it's like looking. And it's like, man, he quit over that? Like, it would cause that big of an outrage? That is an adorable scandal compared to shit that happens today. So, just for being a fucking chump and an idiot, Nixon is on my honorable mention as well.
Have you ever seen it's a fairly new HBO series, the White House Plumbers series?
No, you did it. I remember you did a spot for that or something.
I did do a little something for it. Yeah, I would actually suggest going to watch it just because it's about Watergate, and it shows just how comically ridiculous Watergate was. Like this was stupid. Like this was like it sounded like something George W. Bush would have probably tried to do like if he had the opportunity. But it's so stupid. Like when you think about they had other plans beyond just breaking into the DNC headquarters, and they were all just ridiculous. And then that was the one they were kind of like, okay, the other ones you have are just way too ridiculous. So just this is the least ridiculous one. Do this one, get us some information, and they screw that up, royally. And it just comes back to really haunt Nixon and screw him up. But yeah, like you said too, like the idea of him like quitting over that is like I felt like he probably could have weathered that storm for the most part. And he was just Nixon's whole thing is paranoia. He was just so paranoid about so many things. That's the reason why he's like recording himself in the Oval Office with and those tapes actually come back to like go be used against him. But it's like it's just this paranoia kind of factor to him, to where like he was gonna win in '72 either way. Like he was like. Like he was going against McGovern. Like he was gonna win that.
He crushed him.
He's so paranoid. He's like, I'm gonna let them do this kind of shit. It's like it's ridiculous. It was so Watergate in general was unnecessary. But then just like the fact that his paranoia got the best of him, was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna resign in disgrace. And Gerald Ford will pardon me. And like it's just such a ridiculous episode of American history. It's by far.
It is. Wrap it up with Nixon here. Have you ever heard the conversation, like Nixon, the phone call he gave to Joe Biden when Joe Biden's wife and kid died? Did you ever hear that phone call?
I've seen I think I've seen a transcript of it, but yeah.
It's the most dispassionate thing I've ever seen in my life. It was like he called Joe Biden to inform him he's not getting a raise or something. It was like, hey kid, I hear your wife and son died. That's it's bad business. You'll be at work tomorrow though, right? I mean, it is just like I was like, God, why? I don't know. I wasn't there, and sometimes you don't get it, but like, God, that was horrible. And the second phone call I thought of is they released the video a tape a long time ago, several years back, of Nixon talking to Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And they were yeah, you already know what I'm saying. They were talking about African diplomats, and Reagan referred to them as monkeys wearing shoes, and I was like, oh, Ronald Reagan was a racist. Who would have guessed? That's knocked me over with a feather. That's